Hello and welcome back to Titan Academy. Today we are going to talk about optimization. We will cover two topics. One, optimizing getting data from Salesforce, and two, optimizing conditions that are set on your project. First, let's talk about integrations that occur when you load a project or a page. So what I've created here is a simple project with a power table and two charts. Let's go ahead and preview it. When the project loads, we pull data from Salesforce into the power table and into the two charts. If I go into the network console on my browser, in Chrome, that's right click, inspect, and then choose network in the debugging tools. If you're using another browser, it will be slightly different steps. And let's reload the page. And I'll zoom in a bit to make it a bit easier to see. You can see that we called the SF mapping element 3 times. Once with 268 milliseconds, once with 275 milliseconds, once with 264 milliseconds. That is 3 gets getting called for each of those elements, the power table and the two charts. Let's look at why that happened. In the Titan Builder, if we go to Salesforce, Salesforce integrations, get records, you will see that we have 3 gets that were created for those elements that I added onto the project. One for the account power table, one for a chart showing a list of accounts, and one for an opportunity showing a list of accounts. These 3 gets are added automatically to the page action. So if I go into pages, my home page, configure actions every time for actions that run every time the page loads, you will see 3 rules, 3 independent rules, each of which calls the associated get. If we go inside one of these, for example, this one for the power table, you will see that that calls the get that populates the power table. All 3 of these rules run one after the other each time the page loads. This is not actually the best use case. What we can do is configure this so that these gets run simultaneously in parallel, and that will speed things up a bit. So I'll show you how to do that. First, I'm going to deactivate the 3 rules that were created automatically. I'll turn this one off, turn this one off, turn this one off. You can also delete them if you want. Then I will create a new rule. From this new rule, we will add a Salesforce action. And from here, we will pick the 3 associated gets. One for the power table, one for the account chart, one for the opportunity. We can set some advanced integration options. We can choose to run these in the background without any kind of notice to the user. We can set a custom order of execution. For this example, we will choose a parallel load. That means that all 3 of these will execute simultaneously. But even if you don't choose parallel load, then having these 3 gets in one action will speed things up a bit. So let's take a look at how that changes things. I will apply this and save it. And now if I go back into the preview and reload this, let's zoom in again a bit so we can see. You'll see that we only had SF mapping called one time. Total time was 384 milliseconds, which was less time than the 3 that ran independently of each other that we saw before. So just by combining these 3 actions into one rule and then running them in parallel, we've reduced the load time by more than half, which is quite a good improvement. So that is one tip on optimization of data pulled from Salesforce when the project or page loads. Now let's take a look at setting and executing conditions on different levels of the project. As you know, with Titan, we can set conditions to have actions execute if those conditions are met. Let's look at where is the appropriate place to set those. We have conditions available on the project level, the page level, the strip level, and the element level. But what you may not realize is if you set a condition in an inappropriate place, then it can execute when you don't want it to or when it's not bringing you any benefit. For example, if you set a condition at the project level, it will execute anytime you navigate between pages or refresh any page. And they will run even though you're not on that page. Let's say, for example, that I have a global variable called global. I'll put a default value of true. And let's say that anytime that value is true, if this value equals true, then we want to run a get from Salesforce to update my power table. So if this condition evaluates to true, I will run the get that updates the account power table. And this will run. This condition will be evaluated anytime a page loads. So let's have a look at what happens here. Let's say that we have a second page. Remember, the power table is on the first page. So if I go ahead and refresh, and then I go to page 2, if I reload page 2, let's go back into our debugger network, and we'll see what happened here. I'll go ahead and zoom in again. Notice that an SF mapping call ran. Even though that power table is not on this page, that get was executed when the second page loaded. That's a waste of resources. You're taking up 263 milliseconds to execute an action that does not give any benefit if you're on the second page, because the only thing on the second page is a text label. That power table is actually on the first page. So what could we do instead? For one, you don't want to put conditions to execute on the project level unless you absolutely need them to run every time you navigate pages or reload any page. We could instead disable this condition here on the project level, and we could put it on the home page, which is where this power table is. Every time we make a new rule, if global equals true, then run our Salesforce action. And now this condition will only run when the home page loads. You could further refine things and add some additional conditions to this if rule. Let's say if the global equals true and our global value is changed. So now this rule will only execute if the global value has changed, if it equals true, when the home page loads. This is a common configuration mistake made by many of our customers, where they need to execute actions conditionally, but they set them to run too frequently by putting them on the project level when the page level would suffice, or putting them on a page level when setting them at the strip level or the element level would suffice. So there you have it. That's a quick overview of data loading, getting data from Salesforce when the project loads, and also how to optimize conditions that you set within your Titan project. Thanks for watching.